there, folks. Welcome to my Goodwill book reviews. This is a strange idea, something new I'm trying with as part of my Dreamland newsletter, in which I review books that are new to me that I found at the Goodwill outlet bins destined for recycling and retrieve for a new life. You can see the origins of this very strange idea in a YouTube video, which I'll probably, I guess, link below or something like that. Anyway. To start this thing with a bang, my first review is the Iliad by Homer, the classic Greek story of the tail end of the 10-year Greek and Trojan War. Classic, obviously, of Western civilization. I read it, kind of in college so many years ago, and I read it again and was happy that I did. But, here's the thing about the Iliad. I kept on comparing it to the Odyssey, and it doesn't really measure up. It's not the great book that the Odyssey is. The Iliad here, it's more slaughter for slaughter's sake. It's bravery in the service of destruction. To me, it felt very much like a endless loser leave town World Wrestling Federation grudge match. Years ago, I say that because years ago I got very into pro wrestling, went to a lot of pro wrestling matches in the Bay Area. And, because pro wrestling is about drama and not competition, you find these wrestlers, one guy will be beating the other guy, and the other guy will seem helpless before his opponent's wrath and relentless assault for a long time until from somewhere, from the crowd or whatever, he finds the inspiration. Then the tables turn and he begins to beat his opponent endlessly with pile drivers and body slams and all the rest. It's like this vast swings of momentum. That's kind of how the Iliad is, It's one warrior inspired by a god who gives him spirit. He starts killing people for pages. Then it's another guy's turn and he starts killing people for pages. Nor does it ever seem like there's much free will involved. It's like humans as pawns of frivolous gods. You could see them as like dictators in our modern era. We are used, in the West, we are used to the loving God of Christianity. But, the loving God of Christianity leaves us with questions of why is there evil if God is all powerful? Why do blameless infants die? Why do devout Christians die? Why is there injustice, capricious death, famine, pestilence? Why is there war? Greeks explained it with gods with superpowers in competition with each other, envious and spiteful, and led, I think it's crucial to say, led by like the most loveless, dysfunctional marriage in the history of that human institution. Zeus and Hera constantly plotting against one another and using humans as their pawns. Perhaps a culture so wedded to what we would call superstition, far from science, perhaps it actually had a clearer idea of life and human nature, I guess. Greek gods were so human in their pride and jealousy, their sweetness, their honor. If in the Bible's book of Genesis, God made man in his image, the Greeks made gods in the image of themselves. They're like humans that just don't die. They possess superpowers. They're just immortal, Yet they can be as petty as human. In boredom or arrogance, they plot mass death without having to feel the consequences. They don't have science. This offers as full an explanation of the world as the human race was likely to get at that time. The Iliad, the reason I didn't think it measured up was the Iliad is a book based on one man's petulance. Achilles, the great Greek hero, is raging because the Greek king Agamemnon has taken his slave woman, his trophy from all the battles. In a funk, Achilles decides he won't fight for the Greeks anymore, so for hundreds of pages he sulks away in his ship as Greeks and Trojans battle and his countrymen are slaughtered, including, predictably, his friend Patroclus. The last chapters are of Achilles preparing to avenge his friend's death. I don't think the book can get beyond its origins, which is in one man's petulance, sour grapes petulance, and the whims of the gods on Mount Olympus who are bored by their own immortality, playing havoc with the lives of mortal humans. It all makes for a book about the results of the worst of human nature, the absence of human free will. Agamemnon, it's an amazing moment. Agamemnon even blames his behavior, taking Achilles' trophy woman on the gods. What could I do, he said. A god impels all things to their fulfillment. A great interlude in all of this comes early in the book when a Greek named Thersites, a skinny and a bow-legged fellow, makes an argument to everyone. Why are we fighting for these awful little rich warlords? They take all the booty. They take all the women and sleep with them while we're out cold in our tents. They take all the glory. Let's forget this. Let's forget Achilles and Agamemnon. Let's go back to our families, tend to our land. Let's go back to Greece and live in peace. Odysseus, who in the Iliad is kind of a minor character, in the Odyssey, he's the main character. Odysseus smacks Thersites around. Everyone laughs at Thersites, and the war continues for several hundred pages. As the Greeks argue, we can't leave Troy yet because so many men have died here. How would they feel? Like their deaths would be in vain. It seems to me you can see a little bit of the Vietnam War in this. The argument always was, we can't leave Vietnam because too many people have died. Their deaths would have been in vain. And you can hear the echoes of our Civil War as well, I think, where so many poor Southerners fought and died for the right of a landed, wealthy, upper class to own humans. It's possible that the Iliad is actually a warning against following petulant warlords and the slaughter that can result if we do. What is true, I think, is that of the two classics by Homer, the Odyssey is really the superior book. It's a great tale. When I was 4, my younger brother, my mom and dad, and I drove cross-country from Boston to Claremont, California, where my father, with his new PhD from Harvard in comparative literature, had a job teaching literature at what was then called Claremont Men's College, now called Claremont McKenna College, and where he retired 40 years later. Along the way, my dad told me the wondrous adventure stories from the Odyssey involving Odysseus. Right? They were gripping, enthralling. I literally binged on those stories. Could not get enough of them. The Cyclops, the Sirens. They just took me away. Each time he finished telling the stories he could tell, I pled with him, Dad, tell me again the story of the guy whose name begins with O, because I could not remember the name Odysseus. But that's the Odyssey. It's about human imagination, ingenuity, one man facing challenge, adventure, and using his own bravery and wit to overcome it all. Another thing I'd say is that these two books provide, from our 21st century vantage point, a pretty good description of what the West would become in the centuries that followed them. In the Iliad, it's the lust for war, the most brutal of human nature, which we've seen through the centuries. Certainly last century showed us that pretty well. Pouty warlords who kill for their own glory, risking the lives of others in the service of their own selfishness. It wasn't until we invented NATO that we got beyond that. NATO's proving to be one of the greatest inventions of humankind in the service of peace. The Odyssey, meanwhile, is a celebration of the individual, of human imagination, which is also so much part of the West. What the West has given the world, seems to me, it's a celebration of ingenuity, creativity, wit. Combining all that with bravery, you have the discovery of all a human being is capable of, and you see that in the Odyssey. Odysseus doesn't play with his men like pawns to massage his own little rages, but thinks of them first as he uses his cleverness to lead them back from the endless war back home to family and to peace. Anyway, these are some things I began to think about as while I was reading the Iliad, and that's really what these book reviews are about. Not to tell you whether these books are good or bad necessarily, but really just like what things these books seem to provoke, what ideas. I kind of like that. Anyway, that's my first Goodwill book review. And yes, I found the Iliad in a bin at the Goodwill outlet I go to. So good to have you along. Please tell others. Subscribe to my newsletter here, I think, and to my YouTube channel here. Next time, I'll be reviewing The Candy House by the great American novelist Jennifer Egan. Till then, I'm going to try my best to act like Odysseus and not Achilles. I hope you will too. See you later.